who will present the role of UNEP as an international financial institution strategy. So we will move to the point of view of the developing countries or the international institution, financing institutions.
Good morning. So my name is Myriem Touhami and I work for the United Nations Environment Programme based in Paris. And I'm happy to be here to give you a brief overview on how UNEP structure and implement financial mechanisms. So we are based in Paris, the Division of Technology, Industry and Economics. I come from the Energy Department, under where there is a finance unit. And the mission for that finance unit is to structure financial support mechanism to overcome the market's barriers. So of course, in our branch, our role is not to just look at the financial support mechanism, but how can economy and environment match? Because we hear a lot about financial support mechanism, but it is very important to understand that in developing countries like Morocco, I come originally from Morocco, Tunisia, if we do not structure a mechanism where the end user at the end of the month makes money, he will not buy a solar water heater system, even though you have a very attractive financial support mechanism. So I would also like to take the opportunity to be here in Naples to thank the Italian Ministry for Environment, Land and Sea, because without its support, without its financial support and trust, we would not have been able to develop ProSol in Tunisia. Back in 2004, the Italian Ministry has trusted UNEP to develop ProSol, which gave birth to many, many projects, not only in Tunisia with ProSol Elec, ProSol Industry, ProSol Hotel, but also in many other countries, like in Albania, in Algeria, in Mexico, in Chile. ProSol was a good, not just a very successful case, but it really gave UNEP ideas on how to structure projects and how to structure financial mechanism, because I was first personally involved in the structure of ProSol starting back in 2004. So ProSol gave birth, as you can see in this chart. This is where UNEP has created, structured, and implemented financial support mechanism. And we started with the funds from the Italian Ministry, but we later on received funds from from Environment Facility, from the United Nations Foundation, and from many other donors that believed in the way we structure financial support mechanism. So UNEP is not a bank. UNEP helps the financial sector, works with the local governments in each country, and as Lydia was saying earlier, each country is different. Each mechanism is tailored to that specific country. Of course, the fundamentals that UNEP implements are there is no standard strategy. UNEP uses all kinds of support activities, and we clearly believe that for us to have a successful project, we need to have the involvement of the government. The national government in any country needs to be involved, because without a national policy, without a regulatory framework, we will not be able to have a large impact like the one we did in Tunisia. Of course, Tunisia was a successful story, but we also had some not very good ones, like in Montenegro, where we tried to implement something similar to ProSol, but we did not succeed because the government did not follow the national policies that we proposed for them to implement. So of course, we talk about, this is about supply and demand, for example, in the case of solar water heater systems. In my first draft, this is business as usual. You have the capital cost, and when you want to do renewable energy, you need to have an incremental cost. And then, of course, then we go and we try to convince banks and donors to pay for that incremental cost. But now, that was back a while ago, but now we really need to rebalance supply and demand. We hear a lot about financial support mechanism. But what we need to really do is to also emphasize in creating and fostering the demand. We need to convince the population, we need to convince the people to buy those kind of renewable energy technologies based on attractive financial mechanisms. So it is very important to rebalance the supply and demand. So the applications of UNEP strategy falls under 3 points. We need to develop and structure affordable consumer loans. And it is very difficult, and this is based on my experience being worked in many of those countries since 2004. It is successful when we are able to convince or to get the state utility, for example, like in Tunisia, or maybe to work with the cities and municipalities, like the mayors of the cities. We need to make sure that in order to ensure the uptake of loans that are being developed under all these financial mechanisms, we need to find a way to get all these institutions involved. The second thing is that once you are able to convince a country or a mayor or a state utility, once you do that, then you offer a temporary support. It has to be temporary because you do not want to distort the market. You try to use an incentive just to motivate the market, and then you let the market work by its own. And the last, it is important to motivate, like I was saying, both the demand and supply side. It does not work automatically. We had the experience in Tunisia. It is very important to also have all kind of communication, awareness raising, to convince and to explain to the people the advantages of having all those kind of renewable energy technologies. I'm going to very quickly, we've heard a lot about what's happening in the MENA region, in Morocco, Tunisia. I'm going to give you an example of what UNEP did in Mexico, and that was based on after the reflection, the experience of having with Prosol. When I went to Mexico to develop a solar water heater project, I went with the same idea on trying to convince the government. I looked at the favorable conditions in the country, and I looked at the challenges. Like I was saying, each country is different. Mexico is a very huge country. It was impossible to copy and paste what I did in Tunisia. Tunisia is very small, Mexico is huge. So what we did, we tried to work with Infonavit, which is a huge financial institution. It is a huge bank with the role of helping the middle class, lower middle class people. So what we did create is a green mortgages. A green mortgage, we went to the bank and we said, listen, we would like to convince the people to buy a solar water heater system, plus all other kind of energy efficiency, like the energy efficient lamps. We want them to use some devices to save water. We want them to change their windows to isolate the house in order to have more energy efficiency. And we created what we call a green mortgage. What we did is that the loan of a house, when you buy a house, is usually between 15 and 20 years. We then convinced each person who comes to get a loan for his house, we convinced him to take an additional 1,250 to cover the cost of solar water heater. And that repayment of that cost of solar water heater is not being paid over 3 years, but over 20 years, the same time as the mortgage. So of course, the monthly payments were only $6, but the savings they were making on energy was 17. So then it was easy to convince the person, because you prove to him that you will be making money every month, that you will be making 11 US dollars, because you will be saving it from your electricity bill, and you will be only paying over a very long period of time. So of course, between 2007, this is when we developed the project, over today, we have over 900,000 green mortgages. They were dispersed. We have more than 3 million people who are benefiting from solar water heaters. And of course, regarding its influence on policy, because we are very small to go and try to convince a huge government, then we went and we talked to the federal district, and we showed him the results of that green mortgage program. And then, of course, then, once you have the results, then the government follows and then implements some policy and regulatory changes. And in this case of Mexico, it was tax incentives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Myriem, for this presentation.